what is happening. So this is like a take two. It looks like my feed crashed exactly 1 minute into the live show. So if you hopped on, sorry about that. So we're going to try this all over again. At any rate, let's get back to it. What is happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic start to your week. So Foxy just recently went on the rollers, and as per usual, couldn't get any freaking video. A couple of reasons. One, it was basically just me. And two, and probably more to the point, I was having software issues freaking all day, namely that I couldn't data log. So one of the problems that I ran into, and I was finally able to start data logging a little bit later, basically within 3 pulls of me ending the session. But here's the thing. It was a bit of a pain because of the glitchiness with the software. Again, to use it and say, a pleasant surprise, you're going live tonight. Heck yeah. No, I'll get you guys results of tuning the contraption over here. But the main thing is that the results were pretty good. The car runs great, and aside, again, from just a little bit of street validation, which so far seems to be working out, I've got a weird, and this car's always done this, and it's always freaked me out, kind of an odd, it's not a shudder, it's almost like a slight rattle or something along those lines. And it feels like it's kind of in the transmission area, you know, but anyway. And it's weird because there's like a resonance at right at 3,300 RPM, which sounds like it's pinging, and it's not. In fact, I validated that by jerking like 6 degrees of timing out of it and throwing a ton of fuel at it. And every single time, like clockwork, I get that resonance right there at 3,300. So loaded the other tune back into it, backed off timing just a little bit in that range, and calling it good. But Foxy rips now. As a matter of fact, it's not uncommon for me to bark 4th gear in this thing, which is pretty darn slick if you ask me. 3rd gear doesn't just bark, it hazes now. So, but a lot of the, well, hold on. For you early birds, let me just go ahead and show you what I was able to pull out of it. The dotted line is my old tune, not the stock tune. I didn't even bother dynoing the stock computer. The dotted line is my old tune, and the solid line is what I was able to pick up. There you go. So basically, I was able to pick up about 10 foot-pounds of torque all the way across the board. In some areas, you know, 11, 12 foot-pounds of torque. And then, of course, horsepower was right at 10 at peak, but it was, you know, within 6 or 8 all the way through the curve. So basically was able to grab power everywhere in the curve. That torque, you can definitely feel it down low in here. She just likes to start hazing tires. So anyway, I figured I'd let you guys, you know, let you early folks see what I was up to. But all in all, like I say, the car did well. And by the way, the numbers, and these are SAE net numbers, by the way. Started out at 285, ended up with 294 horsepower. Torque was, hang on, here we go. Torque checked in 326, and we're able to pick up 11 at peak of 337, but I think it was like 12 or 13 in those lower areas right here. So anyway, I was able to pick up some decent power with it. Average power, this is actually pretty cool. So average torque, and this is where you really start to feel the difference. It picked up an average of 12 pound-feet of torque. Went from an average of 305 to an average of 317. Nice little bump there, if you don't mind me saying. And it picked up an average of exactly 10 horsepower across the board, from 249 to 259. Again, with peaks of 294 and 337. But here's something that's kind of cool. The minimum numbers. The minimum numbers, it started out at 272 with my old tune, and I was able to pick up 8 pound-feet of torque, even way down low, and rather way out at the big end. So I mean, it picked up torque and horsepower basically everywhere. And I'll keep posting those up as we're going along here. But here's what I wanted to talk about. So whenever we're talking about dyno numbers, and hey, TU, you beat me to it, brother. So I'm going to walk you through that. So get ready, because this is going to be kind of fun. I think we're going to go over the the numbers, how to kind of extrapolate that. And if one of you guys has a calculator or a pen, because you know I can't do anything unless I'm talking, I'm waving my hands. Oh, hey, yeah. By the way, that's me burning the living hell out of my arm, strapping the old girl to the dyno. And yes, it went when I did it too. So yeah, I was I did that whenever I was wrapping the straps around the lower control arms on the passenger side. So yeah, I keep like I'll snag it on stuff, and it's a real treat. So let me check in. GS1 said, I bet you get a lot of looks in that thing. I tell you what, I get a lot of love in this car. That's the big thing. Everybody loves Foxy. Foxy and Sierra are kind of in the same boat. Everybody smiles, everybody points, everybody thumbs up, all of that. The Hellcat, they're just like, eh. But this thing, they know what's up with the Fox body. So yeah, TU. Oh yeah, here you go, guys. That's what I was able to pick up. The dotted line was my old tune, and then I was able to get it on the dyno and play with some stuff and pick up that power. So that's what the curves look like. So I'm going to walk you through the numbers. So this is on a Mustang dyno, and this is SAE net horsepower. So hey, let me get a calculator. This will help me walk you through it. All right, well, so much for that. Okay, so anyway, SAE net. What that basically means is it's the latest iteration of SAE net. If you wanted the old SAE numbers, you would take that number and you would divide it by 0.96. So basically, if you're going after the old SAE correction numbers, instead of 294, I think you're looking at like 305 or 306 to the rear wheels. Somebody will have to run that number and post it up. That's what it would make. Basically, if you were to compare it to like an old Dyno Jet SAE number. But you know, what would it make in terms of Dyno Jet numbers? Well, if you take that 300 and let's say 305 horsepower, because we're gonna use kind of standard correction for standard correction now, and you added about 8% to that, that'd be about 320, 325 to the rear wheels. So we know we're playing with something that's making, you know, roughly 325 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Dyno Jet dyno in the standard correction form. Now then, what about if you wanted to know what this engine would make on an engine dyno? Because this is where things get kind of weird, because you have engine dyno versus rear wheel horsepower dyno. There's always going to be a significant difference between an engine dyno and as delivered, or net power as you would see it in the car. So if you were to take this engine, by the way, and rate it, like if you're just to say, okay, well, I'm going to rate this thing, you know, what is going to be my SAE net rating? You would take, I would argue you would take that 305 horsepower number and divide it by 0.85. That's going to get you somewhere probably around 335 horsepower at the flywheel. And that is a net number as it would have been delivered the way that it sits now with the shorty headers. It does run catalytic converters. By the way, this car is fully emissions compliant. She's running the stock air pump. She's running the EGR. I got catalytic converters on this thing. The whole bit. Everything is still in place on this car. But in as delivered form, it would probably net like a net rating of about 335-ish horsepower, maybe as high as 340, depending on how you want to look at it. But in perspective, that's roughly 100 horsepower more than a stock 5.0. Now, what would it make on an actual engine dyno? A la, you know, like Engine Masters, whenever you see one of their engines on the dyno, if you were to take this engine and just put it on a dyno, plus what would be the differences? Well, let's take that 330, let's take 325 number, because it's easy just to, for verification. If you ever noticed that when they put the older 5.0 motors on there, instead of 225, I think they all made about 240, 250 horsepower, somewhere in that range. So if you were to just take that 335 or 325, you could probably add 25 to 30 horsepower to that and get roughly what this thing would make on an engine dyno, mainly because it would depend on, you know, how much of the front engine accessory drive did you remove. Obviously, you're not going to be turning an alternator, water pump isn't going to be on there potentially, so all of that eats up a lot of power. Plus, you can run long tube headers with no full exhaust and, you know, pick up power in that way too. So it's kind of funny when you start talking about dyno numbers, how one engine can seemingly spread the gambit with so many different numbers, but that's the reason why. It's just different testing methods. Oh yeah, by the way, the numbers were all run when I made the hit. All of the water temperatures were at 175 degrees. So there wasn't any cheating the number down. And the reason why I say that is because in some instances, guys will basically dump a bunch of temperature out of the engine, ice the intakes, and do all this other stuff to try to show a halo number. And you guys know me. The dyno is nothing more than a tool. I was using it mainly to find out, can I throw more timing at it? Can I throw more fuel? What is the fueling really looking like? Things of that nature. You know, I wasn't, you know, the number is what it is, but to be honest, it kind of surprised me with how well she did. But anyway, I wanted to kind of walk you guys through that too. You know, when we're talking about dyno numbers, making sure that you're coming up with the right number as well. Oh, and the reason why you divide by 0.85, let me walk you through the math on that real quick, because a lot of people say, well, it's 15%. It's a sleight of hand way of getting to a roundabout way, I should say, of getting to the crank horsepower. It's not an exact thing, but it'll get you close enough to, you'll be on target. But I say divide by 0.85 because it's a margin difference. So let me walk you through this, and this is kind of a fun thing to do. You kind of blow your mind if you've never done this, but you'll see where the math will actually mislead you. So let's say, for example, we have an engine, this hypothetical, theoretical engine, and we know for a fact it makes 100 horsepower. So we also have a power train behind it that we know for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it absorbs 15% of that power plant's output to drive the rear wheels. So we expect, well, in this case, what we would see would be 15% out of 100. In other words, 85% of the power of the engine would make it to the rear wheels. In this case, you would have an 85 horsepower engine. But the math doesn't work the other way around. I can't take 85, multiply it by 1.15, and get 100. Don't believe me? Do the math. It comes out to like 96 or 97. Well, where'd the other 3% go, or whatever? That's why you have to take the dyno number and divide it by 0.85, and that will get you the most accurate number at the flywheel. And again, that is in as delivered form. That's not on an engine dyno. You can typically, like I was saying, add somewhere around 30 to 30-ish horsepower for the front engine accessory drive. You'll also hear them, you know, call FEADs or, you know, things like that. That's what they're referring to. They're referring to everything that is not the crankshaft, basically the crank balancer. Anyway, let me get back to you guys real quick. Oh, so T's saying, so very nice. So around 350, 355 crank horsepower. That's about right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of where it falls in line. Cleaver saying, Foxy, I missed a few vids, so forgive. What's your plans with or drag only streetcar mods? So, Cleaver, it's a, this is my original Fox body Mustang. It's, this car is, I've owned it. It's been in my family, so to speak, for the last 20 years, 22 years-ish. So she's back in the stable now over here. I've been doing some things, mainly cleaning her up, getting her back on the road, just basically doing some stuff to, you know, make her a little bit more roadworthy, cleaned up and all of that kind of stuff, but also making sure that the tune is validated, making sure that the car is running as well as she can. And she's done pretty well. And by the way, the car's got an overwhelmingly strong bit of sentimental value to me. I mean, everything that I learned, whether I learned it right or learned it wrong, I learned with this car. So, you know, we're talking, you know, a young version of me going out acting dumb. I'm telling you, this version of me, every time I drive this car, I'm going out doing something dumb. So, but this is the car that, I mean, I used to bracket race this thing. I would, you know, it's been autocross, lots of street stuff, and just generally just being something that does nothing more than puts a big dumb smile on your face. So those are the plans for it. It's a 351 car, AFR heads, GT40 intake, shorty headers. It's not a, you know, in terms of the combination, it's not really a barn burner per se, but for its day, she was stout. And even still, I mean, you figure with power, you know, the car, by the way, without me in it, weighs 32, what did I say, 3240? 3240, 3260, one of the two. And you figure with me in it, it's around, I'm right at 2 bills. With me in it, you know, 34, let's say 3450. It is exactly, almost to the number, 1,000 pounds less than the Hellcat. Now, it doesn't have the power to weight ratio that the Hellcat does, obviously. But, I mean, you figure you're still looking at not that far away from, you know, well, I mean, to the rear wheels, almost a pound, 10 pounds for every horsepower. So it's clearly a lot of fun. We're talking an easy mid 12 second. On a drag pack, I could probably eke a high 11 out of this thing, but man, it's just a lot of fun to drive. And this is one of those times, this is one of those cars that the numbers are irrelevant to me. I mean, these numbers are good. This is a validation of my tune. All right, again, guys, the dotted line is my old tune. The solid line is the tune that I put on it Sunday. And again, I really do apologize for not getting you guys any video. I was up against some technical difficulties with my data logging, and it was, besides the fact that it was 100 and shitload degrees in that shop. I want to get you guys some video, but again, you know, for a majority of the time that I was there, it was just me there, just me in the shop. So, but at any rate, getting back to it, the numbers are almost irrelevant to me, because at a certain point, it doesn't matter what the car puts down on the dyno. It doesn't change how the car drives, and it doesn't matter what the car runs in the quarter mile, because it, again, doesn't change my outlook on it. By the way, just since we're talking about quarter mile stuff, this car has got I don't even want to guess how many passes down the drag strip this car has got. Between this car and my old SSP coupe, I would say somewhere easily around over 2,000 laps, and that's between the old Dallas Raceway in Crandall and here in at Houston Raceway Park. So, yeah, to say this car's got a lot of laps is an understatement. But she's got the battle boxes, she's got the truck carrier, she's got 31 spline axles, long studs, she's got world-class T5, which admittedly needs a rebuild. But center force clutch, bomb-proof bell housing. She's a stout girl, and I'll tell you what, it's so much fun to drive, and especially with the tune on it now, it's fun in a way that I don't just grin, I freaking laugh hysterically, especially again now with the tune that's on the car. Let's see. Oh, Cleaver saying, please be present and focus on cars a bit. Oh, yeah, for sure. Got too much weird stuff going on in the world. T saying really nice power band for the curb weight of the Foxy. Absolutely. So the fun thing about, so guys, when you're talking about, and this is, I mean, let's you know, kind of walk through the numbers here. Oh, dang it. You know, the horsepower is one thing, but again, you know, when we're talking about torque, I mean, look at this thing. It's making it's over 330 pound-feet of torque to the rear wheels at 3,600 RPM, and that's not the peak. It's got a single pattern cam. It's one of the reasons why it's got the double hump in there. I've seen that a lot with the old Ford cams. But I mean, look at that torque. It just comes in waves. I love that. So, but again, fairly common. Some of that has to do with the way that the cam was working with the intake manifold too, which we can talk about that. So the intake manifold, if you can see it, GT40 intake, it's a truck lower. It's actually a lightning lower. And of course the tubular upper. The thing is, with this intake, with any intake manifold, well, and especially with, obviously it's a fixed intake, not like the new stuff, it's all variable, whatever. You've got to, with these types of intake manifolds, make a decision where you want your power. Do you want strong tip-in power, lots of throttle response, but not a lot of carry out, not a lot of over rev? This is the intake manifold for you. Real snappy throttle response. I mean, it's just bam, 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 super snappy. But the only downside is that after about 4,500, and really you can kind of see it on this chart, and it's textbook GT40, but at right around 4,500 RPM, it just runs out of breath. I mean, it just cannot breathe any further, and so you get this rising curve that looks great. You're like, oh man, and look how much power it would have made, and it probably would have, but you'd miss out on everything down here. In fact, back in the day, I used to do a lot of testing. I used to do a lot of parts testing. I've done exhaust parts testing. I've done X pipe versus H pipe versus straight pipe versus X pipe with chambered mufflers, X pipe with straight through, H pipe. Just start naming stuff. Part of the things that I did was intake manifold testing. And where the GT40 won was always on tip-in, always on just the overall drivability of that thing. For a street car, it is an awesome intake manifold, but again, you do lose power further out. If I were to do anything with this car, I would do some things that would help, but it would help everywhere. In other words, extrude hone the GT40 lower, maybe go with something else on top of it. It's kind of hard to say though. The thing is that I don't want to take too much away from the car. It's so much fun the way that it sits now. Let's see. T saying, B, now I'm excited to see Foxy on a tire and see if you can get her into the upper to mid 12s in September, October, cooler weather. So here's the thing. If I can find a drag pack, keep in mind I've got to find a drag pack with the right offset for Cobra rear brakes, because it's got a Cobra conversion for the rear. But I would have to find Cobra conversion brakes and Cobra conversion drag pack for the car. But the main thing is I'd be a little bit worried about the transmission, but I mean, it's a world-class T5, so getting it rebuilt wouldn't be that big of a deal. But yeah, no, it would, on a tire, especially on a drag pack, it would easily run mid to low 12s. I mean, without even thinking twice. It would just depend on how hard I want to launch it, but I would say 1240, 1230 at, say, 108 miles an hour, give or take, would be pretty easy to do. And in good air, well, think of it like this. I mean, it's going to run basically the same ET that a 392 car would run. I mean, it runs a lot like, and it has kind of the overall general feel of a, just in terms of power, of a 392 car. So, whether it's a Challenger, Charger, or what have you, And it just feels like a good running version of that. So, you know, in really good air, probably drag an 11 out of it. But for the most part, a solid, even if it's a solid 1250, 1230 car, or 1260, it doesn't matter. This car is so much fun. And again, it's, this is where, how do I put this? It's at this point in time, there's a cheat code. Remember, you guys always hear me talking about turbos or the cheat code. This is like the antidote for all the fast, okay? Just hear me out on this. The way that this car is set up, easily mid-12s, probably getting to the 11s without really sweating too hard. But just the way the car goes about doing it, and it's light. You hear everything. You're freaked out. Was that detonation? Oh my God, is something falling off the car? But the thing is that it's a completely different driving experience, but it is the antidote for every 8-second car that's running around out there. For everybody that's got a 9-second car that I've had to drive for them. You know, oh, can you get a time out of it? Yeah, sure. 950. Here's your time slip. Peace out. You know. And not to sound like that about it, but you know, this is the antidote to that. This is, look, I've been fast. Everything's been fast. Look, Revlon's fast as hell. In fact, we're gonna try, use that term loosely, to get her into like a 10.0 this winter and fall on 93 octane. And I'm not changing anything at all. I'm just going to keep rolling with what I've done to the car. I think I can sneak her in there. But to that point, with everybody going so fast these days, and with all this talk, you know, the roll racing, and you know, how fast does it go, 65 to 130, and you know, all of that is great and all that is fun. Well, once or twice, and should I say exciting. Because if you've ever done that for any real length of time, you find out pretty quickly that not only can it get spooky, but it can get real interesting real quick, especially if the thing decides it wants to haze the tires at 120 or 130 miles an hour. I've been there. I've done that on multiple occasions. So, you know, there's one thing for doing a rolling burnout at 60 miles an hour. There's another for inadvertently doing a rolling hazing of the tires at triple-digit speeds. You boys know what I'm talking about out there. So, but this car is not going to do that. This car, again, it's there to remind me and to kind of ground me in a lot of ways, but just to kind of bring home the fact that, you know, it not only back in the day was it a lot of fun, but there weren't any nannies to bail you out. There weren't any anti-lock brakes. The brakes that you had pretty much sucked. Even the really good ones weren't awesome. This is kind of a throwback to that era where it was fun, but everything you were doing under 100 miles an hour. And believe me, every time I drive this car, it's going to be going sideways at some point. I mean, it just has to, right? I mean, Mustang life. But no, seriously, for me, that's kind of what I want to bring to it. Something less, you know, ridiculous, and replace that with something that's just fun, puts a grin on your face, and by the way, everybody loves it. And the thing is that, not that I do things for this particular reason, but this is just kind of how it worked out between Foxy and Sierra. Everybody loves it. Everybody's got a story. And the weird thing about it is that whenever I pull up to the gas station, you know, going in to grab something to eat or whatever, this car is more or less an invitation for a conversation. The first thing, I mean, the icebreaker is always, what year is it? And then from there, it's an 89. Oh my God, I had a, and then, you know, they'll tell you immediately, and basically, you know, and it, like I say, it's just an invitation to a story where the Hellcats and, you know, the real fast stuff, it's never that friendly. And now Fox bodies have kind of morphed into this very friendly place, which makes it kind of nice. Biagi saying, keep it up, B. What's up, man? CJ saying, hey, B Mason, what's up, brother? How's it going? It's going good. He's checking in saying, I miss my old Fox, porting polished GT40 heads and intake. I have had that was my SSB. Shorties and pushing 9 pounds of boost. It was fun to drive. Heck yeah. Mine was GT40 heads, F-cam 1.7s. Before that was a B-cam in 1.7s. Cobra intake, power dyne making 10 pounds, and that thing was a riot. And that 10 pounds out of the power dyne didn't last long because the belts didn't like it. CJ's saying, what's the plans for the Fox? Not too much. CJ's saying there's a YouTube channel called Foxcast. They do a lot of Coyote swap Mustangs, as well as some new edges. Very cool. CJ's asking, what's the difference between the Mustang Coyote and a F-150 Coyote, and how come they sound different? Mainly the cam profile. You can talk about the heads and all the other stuff. It's the cam profile, and I think that's basically it. Obviously, some tuning things. They're cam profile really more for towing and lower end torque to get that thing out of its own way. Chuck's saying, nice Fox body, by the way. Thank you very much. CJ said the Fox body looks clean. Thanks. Cody said, what up, B? So part of the long, basically maintaining, keeping up with, etc. of the Fox is basically going to be just, appearance, freshening up, trim pieces, stuff like that. Get the hood repainted, and or actually, should I get it repainted or just get a new hood? The problem is that hood was repainted, 20 years ago, or painted, I should say, 20 years ago. And funny thing, the guy didn't put enough catalyst or hardener or whatever in the paint. So the paint has always been in a slight flow state. I'll just put it to you like this. It doesn't respond well to heat and buffing, and it's got some waves to it now. So, but I'm sure all that can be sanded out and repainted. But, that's going to be the main thing. Again, just, stripping it down, keep cutting the paint, keep trying to polish it, and just keep that process going with this thing. Cody's saying, what up? EC saying, I get a lot of looks on my 96 F-150 as well. In fact, I get people that ask me if it's for sale. I bet. CJ's asking, how is the GMC C25 doing? So, interesting you should ask. Sierra loves us. Seriously, I mean that. And so I had to go to the barn. Let's see, that would have been, today. That was today. And the radiator has started leaking, and apparently it leaked pretty well over the last 4 days, because it was just fine the last time I saw it, but the radiator is going to either need to be repaired or just replaced altogether. I think that radiator it's a copper radiator, I believe, and I think that's original to the truck, or maybe it's the second radiator. It's probably replaced 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So it's going to need a new radiator, and then it will be going over to Dr. Diff, and he'll work his magic and get that thing back, and it'll be a riot to drive. But it's doing good. Just kind of hanging out right now. Oh, and for you guys that haven't seen it or seen them, those are the numbers, or let me rephrase that. That's the chart, and then the numbers down there at the bottom. And again, I was able to pick up, on average, 12 pound-feet of torque and 10 horsepower across the board over the old tune that I put on that car, which is pretty significant difference. I mean, it's enough to where you can really feel it. And here's the other thing. It's not just wide open throttle. I mean, you feel it everywhere. Just at all points underfoot, you feel it. So, pretty nice, to say the least. But I kind of wanted to just bring you guys into the fold on that, give you an update as far as what Foxy is up to, what she is, basically how her freshening up is going. And don't get me wrong, I haven't forgotten about Revlon, but this time of year, and I'm really one to talk. I'm always giving advice to folks and saying, go to the drag strip, do your thing, whatever. But man, you ain't gonna catch me at a drag strip middle of freaking August, beginning of September. It is nasty outside. So to give you guys an idea, when I had this thing on the dyno yesterday, I was soaked in sweat. I mean, it was so super hot. Shocked, really, that the car put down, even the uncorrected number was pretty stout, but pretty shocked that the car put down the kind of numbers that it did. So, you know, you can just imagine going out to the drag strip, that's not going to be a good time. For the diehards that are out there, they're, you know, collecting data and they're, you know, getting out there competing and getting seat time. Man, more power to you. And really, you should be out there. I've just had too many projects and been working on too much stuff here lately. But I am looking forward to getting a new set of shoes for Revlon and getting her to the drag strip soon. So, you know, the funny thing is that the car does really well even in the heat. You know, I've been able to run 1050s and over 3,000 foot DA with that car, and that car has no business running a 1050 in those kind of conditions. So, you know, it's fun to get the seat time in, but golly, man, you just get out there and you beat the hell out of it. Plus, you got to clean the inside of the thing. I got to coat, you know, put towels down on seats and everything else so you just don't make a mess of everything. Cody's saying at least here in Nevada it's starting to cool down. Man, I tell you what, I mean, save me a spot on the couch, buddy, because it is nasty down here. I mean, everything, you got stuff sticking to stuff that ain't supposed to get stuck to down here. I mean, it is just the grossest. And the funny thing is that it's not like this all the time. But for about, I would say about a month and a half to maybe at the most 2 months, you know, this swamp just gets unbearable. So, let's see. Oh, CJ's asking, have you seen a TV show called Trucks back when Stacey David was the host? Yeah, you know, is that even still around? Maybe it's an internet show or something like that. I don't know whatever happened to that show, but yeah, he used to do some pretty wacky things on there, though. Yeah, I definitely remember that show. And CJ's asking, what are the plans for the F-150 Lightning? What are the plans for it? Well, you know, officially Ford isn't making one, but there is, I should say, a dealership out of Georgia. If memory serves me correctly, they're running Roush Superchargers, offering this with a warranty. Regular cab F-150, Roush Supercharger, lowered suspension, and it's got a set of kind of a replica looking wheel on it. Looks a lot like the 04 Lightning wheels. Anyway, if you haven't seen one of these things in person, they're a really good looking truck, and they haul ass. They're I think they're 650 horsepower is what they're rated at. Cody's asking, do you think drop-in K&N filters make a difference? Can't really use my SRI because of the heat. Man, look, let me just say this. I frankly don't have any definitive proof that the K&N or the green filter, for that matter, is a better bet than the stock Hellcat filter. Let me kind of walk you through the reason behind that. I am, though, going to try just running no filter when it comes to this winter. If it makes any difference at all. Here's the problem. The car made 666 horsepower to the rear wheels. Now, that's through the stock air filter. I think the dyno is kind of going through a weird phase there. It's a little bit high, but I did place the number of 666, which I thought was pretty sweet. But I haven't seen a K&N pick up some just chunk of power, the drop-in stuff, over and above the stock filter. So for any power level, let's say less than 800 horsepower to the rear wheels, you're going to have a hard time picking up big chunks of power with any cold air system whatsoever, and that's on the dyno. I mean, again, we just never saw anything gather up torque and horsepower in that respect. And that's kind of a bummer in a way, because I was kind of wanting that. I was really hoping that there would be some, I don't know, even the cheaters, you know, the cheat ones, you know, just a pipe and a filter. Good Lord. On the dyno, in some cases will pick up power, and you know, it's just because you've got the filter hanging out there and you got the fans blowing over it and everything. God dang. Something went down the wrong pipe there. Hang on a second. But no, it was, we just never saw anything like that. So, you know, if that type of intake doesn't pick up any power on the dyno, at least at around that power level, is it really worth it? Here's the other thing. Take the dyno completely out of this equation, and let's just talk about let's just talk about how they perform at the drag strip. There's not, at least I hadn't seen any real proof that a can-in drop-in, especially at the stock power levels, would do you any good. That's why I was so adamant about saying, look, if you've got a 392 car or even a 5.7, throw the Hellcat filter in there. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's certainly well worth it. And you know, I had given the Amazon the Mala the part number and everything. In fact, I just ordered one. Now that you mentioned that, I ordered a new one, and it hasn't shown up yet. I need to check on it. But yeah, again, it's just not. It's like a lot of things with Mopars. There's a lot of marketing hype, and you guys, you know me. I mean, half of the reason why, you know, I'll start barking at aftermarket manufacturers is because there'll be some kind of a claim, whether it's performance or horsepower, because everybody, you know, just can't get enough of that. You know, picked up gains in horsepower. Listen, maybe, but the reality is that I just haven't seen a lot of gains with it. And when you don't see them and you're out there looking for them too, makes it tough. I'll give you an example. The AFE Momentum was the only intake that I had tested that I wanted to set on fire and throw in the middle of my freaking backyard. Several reasons. One, complete pain in the ass to install. Two, the car I think went slower with the Momentum, and this is the 392. There was just no redeeming quality to it. I mean, the snorkel tube's really nice though, so I mean, there's that redeeming quality, so I stand corrected. But I guess what I'm getting at is, when you're starting to talk about like cold air and things like that, we've tried all of them. I mean, we've tried all of them, and the only one that might work, and again, we're taking dyno out of this equation because it's just your car is a dynamic thing, not a static thing on a dyno. The only one that worked was the JLT cold air intake. I don't remember all the numbers and letters or whatever, but the JLT at the drag strip on a pulleyed car might help a little bit in terms of making top end power. But aside from that, there's really nothing that I've seen that works. So, just saying. CJ saying you can still watch trucks with Stacey David on YouTube. Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. Let's see. CJ saying I heard that the 2018 to newer F-155Os are having a bunch of oil consumption issues as well as cam phaser issues versus the 2011 to 17 F-150s. I don't know if there's any big difference there, but interesting. Cody's saying, dang, okay, my teacher said something similar. He told me just stick with the stock airbox. So here's the thing, Cody. Keep in mind, we live in the horsepower era, right? If there were any way for original equipment manufacturers to pick up power with something as simple as an air intake, it would be on the vehicle already. And the argument to that is, well, you've got NVH considerations, which is the noise, vibration, and harshness considerations. Yeah, I get that. You also have considerations for just overall packaging and I'm sure there's some emissions thing that comes with it, although I don't know what it would be. Considering that you've got the shaker that's got a different air intake system, the TA, the Demon, the newer Hellcats, all of them have this, newer induction system. But if you look into where the power is coming from, it's not coming from that induction system necessarily, at least in terms of having that conical filter. And I'll even take that a step further. So Pike's Performance has a package for the Hellcats called a Bravo package. And you've got Charlie Bravo and Alpha packages. The Bravo package is your garden variety mid 9-second package. You're going to run anywhere 950s to 970s with that particular setup. And in nowhere on the build sheet is there a provision for a different air intake system. So you've got cars that are not only 9-second capable, but mid 9-second capable that are running the stock airbox. Some of them are running a green filter, which may or may not make a difference. Some are running the stock air filter. Others are running no air filter when they're at the drag strip. But all in all, plenty of airflow, and obviously the performance is not really hampered at all by that system. So, again, unless you're turning a number, let me think about this for a minute. Unless you're turning a number that is somewhere in the, I would say, 850 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno, maybe 800 horsepower to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno would get you close to that too. That breakover point where you simply need more surface area of that medium so you can flow more air. In other words, you just need a bigger filter, which you just need more of a filter, just more actual flow. That'll get you where you need to be, maybe. But I mean, we're not talking about the difference between 50 and 100 horsepower. It's 12-ish, maybe. Here's the other thing you got to consider too. You just spent all this money to make your car fast, but you're going to limit its ability to filter air. That's probably not a good thing if you live in a dusty environment or you're daily driving this thing or, going through construction sites or whatever, because, let's face it, you're in the real world here. You go to the drag strip, that's one thing, but just driving the thing around normally, I'd want as much filter capacity that I have. And the Hellcat filter actually gives you both. You've got great filtering and you've got great flow. It's pretty hard to beat. Cody's saying, this one for sure gives me more to think about. My goal is 150, 160 horses in the Corolla to make it a fun daily, and was debating on putting an SRI back on it, but now this definitely gets me thinking now, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm saying I can put that money towards, headers and new exhaust. Yeah, I mean, put it towards something that's really going to make a difference. Tell you what, I've been going through water and Gatorade like you guys wouldn't believe. So, oh yeah, getting back to, so we're talking about Revlon there for a second, plans for this fall and winter. So I've gone in that tune and I've kind of played around with it a little bit, and I've got it about where I want it in terms of the transmission tune. I'm going to have to, if I'm being completely honest, I need to wait until, say, the tail end of October, the beginning of November, to get the thing to the drag strip so I can data log it and really, I mean, just fine tooth that 1-2 shift. It's been a little, it's always short shifted it just a little bit. I think I can stretch that out just a tad. But the way that the car sits now, it's probably going to be right on top of the numbers that it ran last year. If we can just sneak in a little bit lower DA, try to pull that 10.0 out of it on 93 octane, I think that would be pretty sweet. To that point, so a lot of folks have asked me, I say a lot, so some folks have asked, am I going to start cutting weight? And if so, where? Am I going to go with the bumper supports? Am I going to do something about, you know, taking the passenger seat out of the car, the whole bit? Guys, I've been adamant about not doing all of that leading up to this year. But this year might be a little bit different. Now, bumper supports, probably not. But that passenger seat might be, I don't know, it might be home for the ride, let's just say, come this winter. The goal is to try to get a 9.99999 out of the car. That's going to be really tough to do at factory boost, at factory weight. But I got to thinking about it a little bit, and I think I may have turned the corner. So many people have been running the passenger seat delete, no matter what brand you're looking at. So the Mustangs, the Camaros, the 392 cars, the Hellcats, all of them, no passenger seat. And for me, as cool as that may be, I've always been one that said, look, I mean, the car came with 2 seats, I'm going to run 2 seats. But when you really look at it, that's not how the game is played. Apparently the game is strip the thing down to basically, if the nut and bolt doesn't need to be there, it can go. I may start looking at, how can I really optimize this combination to get the most out of it? Again, because I'm power limited. I can't do anything else in terms of, putting more power into it. But I can do some things as far as cutting weight. So we shall see. But I would certainly not be beneath, or above rather, pulling out as much weight as I can to get there. And again, I only say it like that because that's what folks have done to run the same numbers that I've run. In other words, no passenger seat, no, the bumper supports are gone or whatever. Which is fine, I mean, I get it. But if we're going to be putting a number down, we need to go ahead and put it in the best possible position. So we'll see. I'm starting to turn the corner. I'm starting to turn that page a little bit, but we'll see. CJ is asking a pretty good question. Do I plan on porting the factory Hellcat blower? Man, I tell you what, I doubt it very seriously. For one, for somebody to do it is kind of prohibitively expensive. I mean, color me stupid, but I kind of remember back when porting a Lightning supercharger wasn't a fifth of the cost of porting a Hellcat supercharger. I just don't see it. But the more power, the more boost you make, the more porting the blower will help. And at only 10 or 11 pounds of boost, I'm not really taxing that housing too much. Now, if you start making 15, 16, 18 pounds of boost and above, yeah, it starts to make sense. And that's when porting the blower will yield results. It's kind of a compound modification. In other words, yes, you're making more power, but your airflow demands are taxing the case's capacity for flow, and therefore when you port the blower, you can actually pick up even more boost because air inlet is easier, less restriction, you're bringing in more air in general. But here's the thing. I may try a larger throttle body, but I'm even on the fence with that, primarily because, again, with a Pite's Bravo package, in nowhere on the build sheet is a provision for a ported throttle body. Again, your garden variety 950 car, 970 car is running a factory throttle body. So, you know, would it pick up? Again, yes, if it had more done to it. And maybe the Bravo package would possibly pick up a little bit with a ported throttle body. But again, I mean, it's how many little bits does it take to make a lot, right? And when you're whittling something down to just to the nth degree, it might help, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. It's just one of those things where if I port the blower, I would almost rather put a pulley on it, be actually far less expensive to do pulley injectors and a retune than it would be to port that blower. It's look up the cost of porting a blower. It's pretty intense. Cody's saying water is essential for summer, hot cocoa for the winter. I'll take Guinness Stout for 1,000, please. Modern Red Emmy saying Roots twin screw, turbo, or centrifugal for drag racing. Depends on what kind of drag racing you're doing, brother. Okay, so y'all know the routine. Turbo is the cheat code. Roots, I'll tell you what, Roots, if you're doing a lot of 8th mile racing and you're basically running a street car, you just, if you're primarily a street car and you're playing on the 8th mile, positive displacement is going to be tough to beat because you get this initial hit, and where the other packages may need to, again, turbo's out of this discussion right now, where the other setup being centrifugal, you'll have to catch them. You might catch them in a quarter, but it's going to be tough to catch you in the 8th. Plus, they're just a lot of fun on the street playing around, you know, short distances. That's where those things win the battle. And again, Roots or twin screw kind of fall in the same category here, primarily talking about positive displacement superchargers. Between Roots and twin screw, you're going to go twin screw every time. Roots are nice. The big lobes are good, but they're just less efficient. A twin screw is going to be more efficient on the big end, but it's not going to be able to give you that big hit down low the way that the Roots does. So again, you know, Roots for ultimate down low power. Think of, you know, well, actually, I think the unit in the new GT500 is actually a Roots style, basically a modified, you know, twisted lobe setup as opposed to the male-female twin screw. Fact check that, but I think that's correct. But like a Whipple, true twin screw, makes a lot of power, much more efficient. But again, when you compare the boost curves of the two, the Roots always wins out down low. Centrifugal, I mean, the cool thing about a centrifugal is that you can always pulley up a centrifugal and make it act like however you want it to act like. I mean, you can, the cool thing about a centrifugal is it's dial-a-boost. Like, you just pulley up whatever boost you want at whatever RPM that you're gunning for. In fact, that's how World War II airplanes, if they weren't turbocharged, the bombers were typically turbocharged and the fighters were typically centrifugally supercharged. And that's really more for packaging. But that's how that worked. They had a compressor, that supercharger, that was basically set up to make X manifold pressure at Y altitude. So you can just bring that down to earth. Let's say you want to make, you know, 15 pounds of boost at 5,000 RPM or 15 pounds of boost at 7,000 RPM. It's just a pulley away, and you can meet those goals. And you have a nice linear power curve. Easier to launch. A lot of guys like it just because they're softer a little bit, depending on how, what type of setup that you're running. I don't know. Then you get into turbos. The problem with turbos is that the answer to turbo is always yes. Turbo has some significant advantages and some significant disadvantages that you just can't overcome. But let's talk about the advantages of turbo first. First of all, it is the cheat code. It doesn't care what the density altitude is. If it has enough compressor, it will make the same amount of boost regardless of if it's at 3,000 feet or 1 foot DA. It might take it a second longer to spool up in the higher DA, but it will get to that power level, provided your compressor is big enough, it has enough flow capacity. So there's that. Turbos also, well, let's be honest, you can scale them just like you can any other boosted application. But the issue with turbos for me is packaging. A lot of times turbos just don't fit, or they're just, you're cramming 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound sack. It just clutters things up quite a bit. But all that clutter is just there to make a bunch of power. And again, if you've got a properly set up turbo car, truck, what have you, there's not going to be a whole lot that's going to be better than that. But there's a disadvantage here. Typically, when you're trying to make the big power with a turbo, what will happen is, and I've experienced this before too, and it's frustrating. So what happens is there's kind of a disconnect. There's, you get into the throttle, and then something happens. It's like a delayed reaction in some cases, and this doesn't really matter when you're just talking about all-out, flat-out performance. And this is where a centrifugal supercharger does have an advantage over a turbo. Correct, yes, you don't have the big torque, the big torque hit, but if it's set up properly, you can have plenty of power, and it's a very linear performance that you're going to get out of that thing. The turbo, again, just the dynamics of driving something that's got a fairly large turbo is that you roll into the throttle and and when it comes on, it's exciting and things are kind of neat, but again, you just don't have that snappy throttle response that you might be used to with, a root supercharger or with a centrifugal supercharger. So, it's one of these things, pick your poison. You can win with any of those systems. The hardest to win with, though, is going to be a Roots, primarily because of heat. That's something else I forgot to bring up. A true Root supercharger is going to, well, for lack of a better way of putting it, they don't call them heat pumps for nothing. They generate so much heat in the pumping process that you can run into a situation where you can make more boost and lose power because your discharge temperature is just so ridiculously high. But again, when it comes to making a ton of power from, let's say, idle to 4,000 RPM, that is in that Roots blower's wheelhouse. Pulley ratios and flow rates all being the same. But if you want to make a bunch of low-end power like that, just pulley up a twin screw. It'll be nasty, but it just won't be as sharp as the Roots blower when it comes to throttle response. Let's see. CJ's hanging out with Modern Red Henny. Let's see. Cody saying that passenger seat can be your ejecto seat. I like it. CJ's asking, this might be a dumb question, but have you ever seen a 2008 Ford Explorer Sport Track? Adriel is something. I've never seen it. Riff coming in. What's up, dude? What's up, man? Riff saying, oh yeah, right now I'm getting my Hellcat done by Overkill Performance, and I was going to send my blower off to Joker Performance, but it does cost a lot. Saying, I will admit I'm getting a bit upset. I put almost 12 grand into my Hellcat now that I'm getting the new stuff done, and I will probably never make it into the 8 seconds. Yeah. saying I'm thinking about getting a Mustang, at least I can do more with that. So here's the thing, and this has been, you know, I'm not really critical of Mopar when it comes to this, but there are some facts that just, unfortunately, you know, it's just a fact of the platform that you're working with. So it's easy to get a Hellcat into the 9s, and it's fairly easy, and you can do it fairly durably as well, in terms of getting the thing into the mid 9s. But to go from a 9, say a 960 to a 930 is overwhelmingly difficult. To go from a 960 or a 950 to a 9.0 is even more impressive if you can get away with it, basically based on weight. It's just tough to do, and it's really kind of tough to do with the limitations of the superchargers that we've got, and you know, things like that. Again, you know, how in the world am I even talking about a 9-second car being limited though, right? But at some point, yeah, you got to make a decision about how fast you really want to go. And you know, no matter how much weight you take out of a Hellcat, there's still a big, heavy car. And let's face it, there's a lot of wind resistance there too. It's, you know, just a big bit of mass going down the, going down the road. So that's kind of where you can sort of run into a bit of an issue with these cars. And you know, if you just come into it with the understanding of, you know, these are limitations of the platform, you know, you'll be in pretty decent shape. Now, don't get it twisted. The Mustang, yeah, you can get them into the 9s, you can get them into the 8s for that matter, but don't believe the nonsense if somebody's going to say, look, you know, this thing was as easy as just, you know, a couple of snaps of the finger and the thing's running 8s or, you know, mid 9s. It's not like that. A lot of work has to go into it, a lot of upgrading, transmission, rear end components, for nothing else, the half shafts, drive shafts, full exhaust, the whole bit. You're going to be into that Mustang a pretty penny to get it to where it will run consistent and safe mid to low 9-second passes. If you want to put the thing in the 8s, you can do that, but again, lots of work's going to have to go into that thing before you're really going to be able to say that you have a solid 8-second car, and again, one that will be repeatable, that will be durable, which is the big one in this, and most importantly, safe. So, you know, if you're looking to do an 8-second build, I mean, you might want to look at something LS powered. It might even be less expensive still. And the only reason why I say that is we have so many low 9-second trucks down here that, I mean, they practically grow on trees. There's a shop down here, Pasadena Speed Shop, I think is what it is. And I mean, they've got 9-second, 8-second trucks floating around. I think one of their customers, a couple of their customers have 7-second trucks. So, I mean, just when you think you got something fast, dadgum, some gun truck show up and, I mean, does what they do. It's just spooky. CJ's asking, can you even port some turbos? No, that is not how a turbo works. CJ is checking out. We'll see you later, CJ. But yeah, no, porting turbo doesn't really quite work like that. Cody's saying the famous ejecto seat, cuz. Cody's saying if the Hellcat was twin turbo, it could probably sneak into the 9, you know, somewhere in the 9s. Yeah, the only downside, and again, this all comes down to packaging, by the way. I personally haven't seen a turbo kit that I would readily sign off on for these cars. It's one of those goofy things where the packaging just sucks, and there's not a lot of room underneath there to work with. So because of that, there's just kind of I mean, where would you put them? I mean, I'm obviously there's ways to do it, and there's effective ways to do it, but I don't know. It would be kind of tough. But no, you're right. I mean, if you were to build something, obviously, again, turbo's the smart play on this. But I mean, you would need to be able to probably run somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 horsepower to be able to really get into that neck of the woods that you're looking to get to in terms of power. So, you know, I would probably say that, you know, if, then you got to get into this side of it too. I mean, how much money do you want to spend? I mean, you got to spend all of it if you want to go that fast. Sam saying wants to do a GMC Suburban with a big diesel. That'd be kind of fun, actually. You know what I'd still like to do is an excursion. For some reason, I always like those school buses, and you know, just hot rod a 7.3 a little bit. I think that'd be a fun tow truck. Cody's asking, if I were to install lighter pulleys, would I have to get it tuned? Lighter pulleys? No. If they're the same size as stock, I mean, you're talking about the idler pulleys, then absolutely not. You don't have to get it tuned for that at all. Now, if they're smaller, then yes, you will certainly have to get it tuned for that. Ethan checking in and saying, hey, be super happy to see you on tonight. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate the kind words. Saying, any chance you're going to get some swap action out of that Fox Coyote Hemi? Please do the build. This channel would boom. So here's the thing. If I were to do a swap, it would probably be a Coyote swap. I just don't see a reason to do an LS swap or anything like that. It's kind of something that's already been there and done that. But you know, the more I thought of that, first of all, you got to keep in mind this 351, I mean, even though it's 15 years old, probably doesn't have more than about 15,000 miles on it. But the big issue with doing a swap is you start to lose a little bit of that old school charm, and that's something that I really like with this car. And you know, granted, I mean, I'm looking at the dyno sheet, and you know, I wasn't able to pick up a ton of power. Well, I mean, I picked up a good amount of power, but I mean, when I put a tune together and I can pick up that much torque over an existing tune that I had put on this thing, granted it was a very old tune, but still, you know, that's saying quite a bit. But this is what you would miss out on, that nice little chunk down here, which is what makes this thing such a riot to drive. So yeah, probably not anytime soon. Like I say, I love the car the way that it sits now, and man, I got too many projects. In fact, I would have to start jettisoning projects to even be able to afford a project, you know, swap project like that. Sam saying, I like the 79 and 89 Suburban. So do I. Good luck finding one too, by the way. Let's see. Cody's asking a tune and a smaller belt because the pulleys are lighter, right? Not necessarily. The TBA machine pulleys are the same size factor, a little bit slightly larger. You might actually want to get a little bit longer belt to work with those. But yeah, you don't want to get I mean, if you're getting a smaller pulley, we're talking about pulleys on the Supercharger, then yeah, you absolutely need a tune for that. But aside from that, no. Roof's asking, Sam, why not a 7.3 swap? Nope. Although that would be pretty fun to do. And the power that they're getting out of that thing is just like, what this shit? Roof's asking, so right now my LCAT is being built for full E85. Do I need to test the ethanol content every time? Okay, I'm already getting ahead of myself. Yes. Ish. Here's the problem. So, don't take my experience to be normal. Please. That's like a mistake that you can make here. My experience is not normal. From working at the shop, I'm always around the shop still in one way, shape, or form. still represent the shop. But here's the thing. I've run into E85. I've run into E85 problems 3 times. The first time, I damn near blew up a car on the dyno because the E85, although it still smelled like old socks, what was weird is that it was almost like this part of it has happened twice at the same station. It was almost like the truck driver filled up the E85 tank with like 93 octane or something like that, but it was like they were just topping it off. It was really weird. And this, this gas station, we're kind of taken for granted, still do in a way, but just taken for granted, never had a problem. And this is the first time I ever ran into a problem. So I'll fill up the tanks, get the fuel back to the shop for the customer dyno testing. And I get the car on the dyno and I fire it up, and it's, the fuel trims are already taken care of. I was basically just buttoning up the car on the dyno. And I get back there and I'm like, this doesn't smell right. Like it kind of smelled like a little bit like just normal exhaust fumes, but also kind of smelled like the 85. Like, what the hell? So, anyway, started to make a couple of just kind of going through the gears. Car kind of, it felt fine. Rolled into the throttle and it started running pretty lean. So it's like, yeah, something's not right. And sure enough, it was a bad tank at E85. The same scenario played out probably about 3 months later. Same type of a scenario. However, in this case, I wasn't the one that filled up the tanks. It was somebody else that filled them up and put the fuel in the vehicle. Started going through the gears, just kind of like you would normally do, just buttoning up the tune. Same thing. Go to roll on the throttle, and I'm looking. I really wasn't paying attention to short term at this point. I'm just looking at the wideband. I'm doing my hand like this ways to hold it, and I'm looking at the wideband, and it's leaning out and going, this can't be right. The last time it happened to Rob's car, that the real pretty 392 Charger with the stripes, friend of Racer X and myself, a good friend of ours. He had come down last August, or was it August before last? Anyway, he had come down to Houston to run his car and got a bad tank at E85. I'm telling you all of this because there are people that never check their E85 and never have a problem. But if you're sinking that kind of money into your car and you're going to be planning on running El Macho Echo Ocho Cinco, then you're going to need to be testing that stuff. At least have 1 or 2 stations that you go to that you trust, like, because keep in mind, a bad tank of 93 octane can kind of ruin your day if your car is tuned on 89 or on 93 octane. But it'll just make the car kind of run like crap. You get a bunch of spark, knock retard in the modern stuff. A bad tank of E85 can be catastrophic. So, hang on just a second. Hey, C10, thank you very much. Saying, what's up, B? Great dyno results. You and 5.0 Tesla inspired me to pick up a clean 4-cylinder 93 coupe. Awesome. Also picked up a 94 Cobra donor with AFR heads. Awesome, man. Keep us in the loop on that one, man. You're going to have a lot of fun with that. So you're getting a 93 coupe, dude. I love it. So I had a 93 SSP that I loved, and I think you are too, man. That is going to be a lot of fun. And one more time, guys, this is what I was able to pick up over an old tune. This isn't factory, but that's what the curve looks like. So And again, you know, this is what I was talking about too. When we start talking about power curves and things like that, intake manifolds, it's this area right there, this little guy right here, and basically it's after 4,500 RPM. In this area, now you're going to lose right here, but you're going to pick up here, and typically this will it'll be a little bit lower, and it'll kind of come up, and it'll just arc a little bit better past like that torque curve. Let it rev out a little bit farther. GT40s are fantastic. They make a bunch of power right here, like from right here and back. And really that second pump is, you know, in fact, these typically will be a little bit lower, and they'll kind of arc over like that. The heads are doing that for you. But these are AFR heads also. These are large chamber AFR 185. So these are the 64cc AFR 185s, because this car was originally being put together to remain a blower combination. But I mean, after the combination was put together, my dad was like, man, I really like the way the car is now. I said, well, don't put a blower on it. So there you go. But thank you very much for that contribution. It's awesome. Congratulations on your new acquisition. Even saying, I was also insanely impressed with the numbers the 351 put down. Oh, thanks, man. If you're keeping that motor, then right on, man. Yeah, see, the thing is with the 351, it's torquey, it's snappy, it's easy to work on. It's a lot of fun all the way around. And again, keeping it old school, keeping it Windsor, there's a certain charm in that. Besides, if you haven't had a chance, check out that quick rip through the gears that I did, that little blast from the past, the soundtrack of the 90s for me. I mean, what's not to love with that? Riff saying, I'm thinking I may need multiple tunes for the ethanol content and how it changes throughout the year. So here's what we used to do. We would leave about 3-ish gallons of 93 octane in the tank, and then fill it up with E85. What that does is it cut I think the E85, I think it cut it down to E70, if that's the correct. Anyway, check that. Check that out. If you cut it to E70, with like 2 or 3 gallons still in the tank, that'll kind of protect you a little bit with some of the funky. Because you got to remember that E85, the MEA specification is E70 to E90. So if the fuel is anywhere from E70 to E90, it can still be sold and marketed as E85. And again, the reason for that is because the ethanol attracts water. It's, you've got lower freezing points of that material, so you're going to cut it with more gasoline during the fall and winter in some areas, just to keep it from icing up, I'm guessing, because again, ethanol is hydrophilic, whereas gasoline is hydrophobic. Philic just meaning it likes water. It's like mixing alcohol with, your favorite, soda. It can be Jack and Coke, right? Anyway, but getting back to it, the main thing is that you don't want to, I don't know if you'd want to have multiple tunes. I think you just need to tune it properly for the E85 and just keep an eye on it. Again, run with only a couple of gas stations that you can trust, and if you're out and about somewhere else, test it. The other thing too, and you're going to find this out pretty quickly if you're tuning on E85, really the only tunes that you need are E85 and a 93 octane tune. Unfortunately, there's no real good provision for flex fuel. I know there's folks that say that there is, but through HP Tuners there is not. There's just no provision for it, and because there's no real provision for it, you've got to go with multiple tunes, which means you've got to be comfortable swapping out tunes. but again, it's E85 life at this point. I mean, you're going to have to get used to the notion that testing your fuel is now something that you've got to do if you want to use pump E85. And again, you know, you can do a little research and find out in your area, you know, who sells quality E85. There's forums and apps and things like that for folks that are just big into that kind of thing. I'm sure there's some additive they have out there too, but I don't know. 6.2 Heavy Power saying I had a 306 with aluminum GT40X heads with an F-cam. Hey, I like the combination. Long tube Mac 1 3/4 with catless X pipe, 410s, and compy car 175 shot. The car was in the 11s in 1996. I love it. The X heads were good heads. So you had the GT40 irons, the GT40Y, which was the aluminum version of the GT40 heads. Then you had the X heads. Then you had the Z heads. And those were all actually really good small block heads. X heads on a 302 were really good. That's a fun car. 60 saying went 393 Windsor with a T-trim and the car flew, but it stayed broke. Had way more fun with the 302. Man, that's why I got rid of my 427 with a T-trim, dude. That thing broke everything that was attached to it or that was the powertrain behind it. I mean, nothing was safe with that engine. I mean, but I put a hurting on quite a few folks with it. You know, made some pretty decent money on occasions with that car, but it wasn't enough to keep it on the road. I'll tell you that for damn sure. Cody's saying, I can dig that. I was thinking about at least OEM size water pump and idler pulley, but lighter. In that case, yeah. The water pump would actually be larger in that case if you're going to put a different pulley on it. The bigger the pulley, the less resistance, or the easier it is to turn. But it's going to turn slower, so just know that. Sam's saying 7.3 is cam and block, old school V8 overhead cams scare me. Oh, they're not that bad. Overhead cams, very old technology. Ethan saying, at Rift, I've been running E for quite some time and would suggest you go to your local E85 station and test it. If it's good at 85%, then make the investment and buy the batch in mass. Yeah, it's true too. Good point. A lot of guys do that. A lot of guys will keep fuel on hand. So that's another way to get around it too. And again, C10, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate that. Let's see. Riff saying, I heard if gas trucks come back with any fuel in them, they get penalized. So some of them just put what's left in other tanks. Yeah. I don't know if they would do that in an E85 tank, though. I don't know how that works. HE37 saying, when you want to go all out, the Mustangs and Camaros are relatively cheap to buy. They're not heavy, and with weight reduction can be made lighter. It's easy to make them faster. Yeah, it is. Sam's saying putting a truck motor in a car is kind of like old school hot rodder. Yeah, that's true. HE37 saying it would be hard for me not to put a centrifugal supercharger on your Mustang. Carrying the torque out another 1,500 to 2,000 RPM would really make that car really fun to drive. I don't think it would carry it another 1,500. It would do really well to carry it about another 400 or 500 RPM. You got to remember your intake manifold dictates that. Although the centrifugal would have a rising boost curve, so well, that's kind of duh. I mean, right? When this car was a 302 and had the power dyno on it, it was a lot of fun to drive, but I wouldn't say that it would be better. And yeah, it would be kind of tough to argue that it would be a bad idea to put, you know, some you know, insert self-contained, you know, centrifugal supercharger on the car, but I don't know, man. I like it NA right now. Let's see. C10 is saying, I have 2 computers for my Hellcat. Can Alex load a 93 tune on one and an E85 on the one using 275 upper and Innovators West lower? Also considering an ethanol content sensor. I heard the fuel rail loses pressure. So, a couple of things here. I guess technically, yes, you could, although I don't, it's just as easy just to, you know, swap out your, you know, swap out the tunes. But if you got both of the computers, you could, but there's the downside to that is that you're going to have to, well, you probably already unlocked the computers. And I don't know, if they're Siamese, do you have to buy credits twice? Not sure about that. But the logic is pretty solid, and yeah, I don't see that would be a reason or a problem, you know, reason to have a problem. You could just swap out computers, but that would be kind of tough to do. Plus, you would be doing that presumably at the house where you still have that fuel in the car. So that would make it kind of tough because you'd be kind of out of gas, put the other computer in, and then try to stumble it to the gas station to fill it up with the right kind of fuel, as opposed to just having your laptop there, fill it up, and swap tunes while you're there. Probably be the better play on that. And it might be less expensive too. Oh, as far as the fuel rail losing pressure, no, I haven't seen that. Not with the right fuel system anyway. Injected engineering would probably cover what you're looking to get out of that car in terms of power output, so we could be all right. But just my 2 cents on that, by the way. A237 saying, what are your thoughts on adding a dry nitrous kit to add 50 to 75 horsepower? The kits are cheap to buy. You know, yeah, you can. I mean, you'll pick up right at 50 or 75 horsepower. The only thing that I don't like about nitrous in this application over there, the Hellcat, the only thing I don't like about nitrous is the distribution. Now, if you're talking about the NA cars, you know, 50, 75 shot, you're still going to potentially have a slight distribution issue, but it's not going to be near that bad. You got to be careful with that stuff because, again, it's in the distribution. That's where the issues come into play. One cylinder gets hit with a big hit of nitrous. You know, maybe number 2 doesn't seem near that amount, and so you got to be careful. When we're talking about nitrous, again, it's all about distribution. And this is one of the reasons, I mean, it'll work on a dual plane manifold. It'll work on something like a GT40. People have been doing that stuff forever. But back in the day, they used to mount the nitrous, instead of doing it at the throttle body, which is arguably safer, you used to see them mounted along the plenum. And again, that was just to get a better distribution of the nitrous into that engine. So you can do it, but I don't know. 50 to 75, by the way, it's not going to get you that much. In fact, you may not even really notice 50 to 75. And then other guys say, well, what about using nitrous for cooling? The problem with trying to use nitrous for cooling is the amount of nitrous that you need to run to significantly drop inlet air temperature. Once you get to that point, I mean, you're running nitrous as the power adder at that point. It's not just cooling the charge, it's your power adder. And if it's a secondary power adder, you need to be planning accordingly for that. Sam saying, I'm looking at 79 to 89 Suburbans and also Blazers. Plan is to put a mechanical diesel and maybe 700 horsepower power build. That'd be pretty fun. Cody's saying, definitely going to be excited when I find some lighter pulleys. Got the stream on my phone while looking at Corolla forums about lighter pulleys. Nice. Very cool. C10 Mod. I almost missed this one, saying Foxco. Thank you very much, by the way. Appreciate the support. Fox question, does Alex tune Holley EFI? I'm going to use Holley EFI for the Fox body, and I like the integrated nitrous controller. Your thoughts? You know, I only know of one car. I think I only know of one car that Alex tuned on the Holley EFI. I'm pretty sure he can, but I don't think they've got a protocol necessarily for it. I just don't get a whole lot of call for that. The integrated nitrous controller, here's the thing. I believe that the way that controller works is a little bit, I'm not going to say primitive, but I'm not that familiar with it. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, well, you know what? I don't want to speak out of turn, because if it's not what I'm thinking that it is, and it might be more sophisticated now than what it used to be, then, you know, I don't want to, again, I don't want to step on my business talking about something that I'm really not super familiar with. But believe me, if Holley's got it as an available option for their kits, I'm sure it works fine. Just remember that, you know, when you're putting nitrous together, and this goes for anybody that just says, nitrous is cheap. No, nitrous can be cheap, and that's basically how you turn a very expensive engine into a very expensive, you know, piece of lawn art. Make sure you're getting quality solenoids. Make sure they're sized appropriately for the amount of nitrous that you're going to run through it. Make sure you set the thing up as safely as you can and as seamlessly as you can. When you're putting a nitrous system together, one of the big mistakes that guys make is they just go bottle, heater, solenoids, switch, fuel source, and done. And although that is somewhat correct, with modern, and you can get away with that with, you know, like an old, you know, Chevy, an old Mopar, old Ford Windsor, or something like this thing, something that's already not making a lot of power as it is. You throw nitrous at it, it doesn't really phase it that much. The newer cars, though, a little bit different story. They're already making quite a bit of power from the factory. The metallurgy really hasn't changed, though. Internals really aren't that different, and so when you start to look at it from that point of view, you go, oh man, I'm already making 150 horsepower over the old stuff. And then you start adding even more power on top of that. You kind of see where I'm going with that. So again, progressive controllers, feeding this stuff in based on injector duty cycle can help quite a bit. There's just a lot that you want to do. Basically feed the nitrous in over the course of, say, a second or 2 seconds. These are the types of things you can do that will help make the system, number one, be a bit more seamless, and number two, help us with the longevity of parts that are downstream. You've got to remember that when you're running nitrous, that is a instant torque hit. Instant torque hits are what breaks things. So again, feeding that nitrous in with a progressive controller, obviously using a window switch, all of these things are important with those kits. But I mean, everything you're talking about, I mean, it would work just fine. I just don't know. See, the last time somebody brought a Holley EFI kit or anything like that by the shop was in a Chevelle. And I don't even know if Alex tuned it. He might have given the guy some pointers, but I don't recall that car going on the dyno, but that could have happened. Let's see. Oh, Cody says he's trying to go with a sleeper. No one expects a Corolla that isn't an XRS to be fast. Very true. But no, C10, just getting back to it, you know, is like, and again, I should have this part number memorized, and I don't. It's a Nitrous Express kit that does basically everything. You can run it, but I mean, for your application, I don't know if it'd be as good. You know what? I bet you, honestly, if you're thinking about going the Holley EFI route, that's probably going to be the best way to control your nitrous anyway, because everything would be integrated. And I think the provisions in that system, I think you can provide, I think it's easier to provide the extra fuel when the system is triggered through that system, if I'm not mistaken. God, it's been a minute since I've even messed with some of that stuff. So, with the limited amount that I've even looked into them. But if it's the same one that I'm thinking of, it's actually a pretty sophisticated unit now that I'm thinking about it. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be kick-ass. Oh, C10 saying, too true, have 1200 in a nice kit. Yeah. NOS controller, cheater system, pressure gauges, heater, fuel pressure sensor, hob switch, another big thing that you're going to need. If you guys don't know what a hob switch is, basically, it's a fail-safe. It's a hob switch is a pressure activated or a pressure deactivated switch. And if you lose fuel pressure, the hob switch will not let the nitrous fire. And on a wet kit, that's a major thing. There's also even some kits that are sophisticated enough to where if the bottle pressure drops below 900, it won't fire. If the fuel pressure drops below whatever you've got programmed in, because EFI systems can be a little bit different. Anyway, if you're light on fuel pressure, it won't fire. All of these things, all of these fail safes are there for a reason. Perfect example of this. I mean, I had been went on a stretch and we had quite a few nitrous cars coming through the shop. Nitrous Hellcats, Nitrous 392 cars, the whole bit. And I got tasked with basically just dragging some, it was a mild, very not a big deal, just standalone nitrous setup, which made life really nice. All I had to do was just remove timing, but for this tune, but everything else was controlled by that Nitrous Express controller. Standalone fuel system had the nitrous was fired off of injector duty cycle. I mean, there's a lot of really cool things going on with this thing. And true to form, everything's looking good, got everything set up, pulled the timing, ready to make the base hit, go to watt, nitrous fires, and AFR goes pig rich, 9 O's. And I'm going, whoa, and I get out of it. What happened was the nitrous solenoid failed, and the nitrous just didn't fire. That can be equally as bad as the fuel solenoid not firing and only the nitrous solenoid firing. You know, hydrolock an engine. Now, 9-to-1 is super rich. I mean, you're almost at the verge of potentially hydrolocking the engine. It's just bad. I mean, 9-to-1, you might not hydrolock it, but I mean, you're getting dangerously close. So, yeah, that actually, you know what? That's happened to me twice now that I think about it. So we had another car on the dyno, nearly the same scenario. In fact, I was working real late one night with this one. God, man, all these memories. Okay, so NAG 1 car, fully built 426, Kenny Bell, 150 shot on. Same thing, and this is one of those deals where, you know, it's midnight. You know, you've been working, you know, I'm at hour 16 at this point, and it's just me in the shop, and I'm holding on to the AFR gauge, got the computer, got everything set up, go to make the hit, and it's weekend, and I mean, I'm looking at I remember I was looking at the dyno, came back, looked at the tach, it's what, saw where it fired, looked down, and it's like the same thing, 9-to-1, and it's like, oh my God, dude, this is like bad year for solenoids. So, if you're thinking about going nitrous, get the best possible kit that you can afford. And keep this in mind, just like you got to keep the bottles filled. Don't forget, once a year, you got to swap out your solenoids. People will argue with me over that. That's fine. I would rather lose the argument, but keep an engine on that deal. I mean, you might not have to swap them out every year. Swap them out every year. You'll thank me for this. Your long-term financial stability will thank me for that. Oh, here we go. C10 saying mainly like shift by time or by RPM. Also saying, yeah, you do all that, it's pretty crazy. Plus it has boost control if I ever decide to build an engine. That's pretty cool. Then yeah, you're in good shape with that setup. I think it'll be good. We're just talking about adding fuel through the Holley EFI system with the nitrous. White Knuckles saying, what's up, B? I've had nitrous on my 5.7 for a couple of years now with no issues. Main thing to remember is to use quality fuel and don't get greedy. You better believe that. That is how you fail an engine with nitrous 101 is getting greedy. Let's see. Cody's talking about his Corolla, saying downstream is before my regular cat, has a pre-cat, and my resonator right after it. Would I be able to get away with a catback without the engine light going on? Probably. Let's see. Chances are your catback will have that provision for that setup, though. Oh, C10 saying, yeah, got to make sure you rebuild the solenoids at least once a season. That would be horrific. Yeah. Let me tell you what's horrific. When you've got a car that's on the dyno that is already a stroker motor, a blower motor on top of being a stroker motor, a built tranny car, and basically all the bells and whistles and all the fixings that comes with that. And you've got basically, think of the money that it takes to put that together, and know that one solenoid can make all of that fail. I mean, that one cheap component by comparison can create a failure, a catastrophic failure. It's creepy. It's very creepy. Oh, C10 saying, yeah, to make sure you rebuild the solenoids. Oh, yeah. The Holley has for AFR setting for high and low cutoff. That's super cool. Yeah, then I was thinking of the wrong kid. Oh, Doc Diff's finally back in his house. Yeah, the storm pretty much did a number on my buddy Dr. Diff, saying finally got back to the house, got power back at about 8 p.m. Saying, what's the topic tonight? We're just talking about all kinds of stuff tonight, man. Talking about the gains that I got on my car. The dotted line is the old tune that I put together for this thing forever ago. And the solid line is the new tune that I did on the car on Sunday. Not too shabby. See Tim saying, we blew up a buddy Chevelle on the trailer by getting ready. Man, okay, so talk about crazy nitrous stories. Had the safety valve fail on a bottle of nitrous in a buddy of mine's Mustang one time. That was nice. Yeah. I've seen, I didn't experience this personally, at least I wasn't like right next to it, but a nitrous solenoid was leaking nitrous into the intake manifold. A lot of times, so when, another top tip, whenever you're not, think of nitrous as a loaded gun. All right, if you're not clearing leather, it needs to be holstered. Okay, so what happens is guys will forget to, and this happens more than you think, but guys will forget to shut the bottle off and purge the system. And if you forget to do that, obviously it's hell on solenoids. So again, there's so much more that comes with nitrous. There's a lot of, yeah, okay, well, it's less expensive maybe on one side, but there's a lot of maintenance that comes with it that you just have to know about. So, but yeah, I get it, man. That is brutal. Hey, Destroyer 1320's checking in and saying, hey, Professor Mason, what's up, man? Then again, you're talking to somebody that put nitrous oxide on a rotting lawnmower once, so, you know, go figure. But, well, guys, we're coming up on 2 hours. I've got to wake up crazy early in the morning. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me tonight. We will catch y'all on the next one. Thank y'all very much, and God bless. That is a wrap on this one. Hey, y'all be safe out there. Wear your mask, do all that stuff. If not for yourself, then for others. Don't forget, everybody's going crazy right now, so try not to go crazy along with them. That's a wrap, guys. Y'all have a great one. Adios.